Hey guys, a couple weeks ago I helped out a panel at the Con of Thrones entitled Westeros, Dead or Alive. I created some conversation-starting videos on whether Quentyn, Jojen, Ashara, and Stannis are alive. I figured you guys might enjoy seeing these videos. So in A Dance with Dragons, we follow Quentyn Martell as he and his companions Arch and Drink head from Dorne to Meereen on a quest for Quentyn to marry Dany. However, Dany refuses, and Quentyn decides to prove himself worthy of her hand by stealing one of her dragons. Quentyn, Arch, and Drink, with the help of a sellsword company called the Windblown, sneak into the pyramid and attempt to capture a dragon. This adventure, though, ends with Quentyn aflame and screaming. We flash forward to a few days later to find a severely burned body dying and Quentyn's friends distraught. So the question is, could Quentyn be alive? Well, fundamentally, it's a bit odd that Quentyn's story is so anticlimactic. What's the purpose of having this character head all the way out to Slaver's Bay and then die? Now, perhaps that's the whole point, to have a hero's quest fail miserably and to subvert a trope. But that's a fair bit of extra writing for a book series that its author has been wanting to be shorter. It's also astoundingly odd that our author has hidden the events surrounding Quentyn supposedly getting hit by dragonfire, and he does this not once, but twice. The chapter cuts off with Quentyn aflame, and when Arch later tells his version of the events, he passes right over this moment as well. This peculiarity is compounded by the fact that Quentyn's body is unrecognizable, allowing for a swap-out in the tradition of Bran and Mance's fake-out deaths. Not to mention, we have about a dozen other little mysteries, like why Drink was acting distraught when we are specifically told he never acts this way, or why Quentyn's whip was burning when leather doesn't burn, or how the dragons of the Windblown got out of the pyramid when we're told that it's a maze, or why Drink had his sword out when Barristan's men found him. And so we are left to wonder, is Quentyn alive? In A Dance with Dragons, Bran and his three companions, Hodor, Meera, and Jojen Reed, make it to the Cave of the Three-Eyed Crow, and Bran begins some sort of telepathic training to become a so-called Green Seer. Jojen Reed, though, becomes incredibly depressed once at the cave, and spends his time simply standing at the cave mouth, staring out over the forest. Prior to making it to the cave, Jojen had spoken of knowing the day he would die, and Meera becomes angry at her brother for not trying to fight his fate. When we last leave Bran, he is called before Bloodraven and fed a so-called acorn paste that looks a bit like blood. Bran explores the pass through the weirwood and then returns to his alcove to sleep, but Jojen and Meera are strangely gone. And so we are left to wonder, is Jojen alive? So Bran's story has quite a few references to cannibalism, with Bran telling the story of the rat cook, Bran eating human meat as Summer, and the posse feasting on meat after Cold Hands murders some Night's Watchmen. With Jojen predicting his death and then missing, and Bran eating a bloody porridge, and his story being filled with cannibalism, fans often debate whether the Children of the Forest murdered Jojen, chopped him up, and fed him to Bran. Perhaps the flesh of a telepath can aid the development of another telepath. After all, Varamir Sixskins did eat his telepathic mentor. Then again, Jojen's sister Meera is missing as well, and she's not a woman to believe in fate. Sensing that something was wrong, perhaps she took the initiative and rescued her brother. Or perhaps Jojen and Meera are simply cave exploring and catching fish. Nonetheless, we are left to wonder, is Jojen alive? So when A Game of Thrones begins, Catelyn tells us of Ashara Dayne, a beautiful, violet-eyed woman who she and Cersei believe to be the mother of Jon Snow. And quite significantly, a boy named Edric Dayne tells Arya that Ned and Ashara were in fact in love. Ashara's name is written just 13 times over the course of the 5 books, but fans hotly debate her importance to the story. Ned visited her at Starfall after his encounter at the Tower of Joy, but for what purpose? To deliver news of her dead brother? To return a sword? To talk about the relationship? To deal with a baby? To deal with babies? Ashara had supposedly just dealt with a stillborn, with Ned arriving after Lyanna's probable birthing at the Tower of Joy. Ashara supposedly committed suicide after Ned's visit, and yet our author answered this infamous question back in the year 2000. We were repeatedly told that Ashara threw herself into the sea. I wonder how this is known for sure. Was her body ever found? No. And so we are left to wonder, could Ashara be alive? Of course, it's a fairly prevalent trope that missing bodies lead to a surprise reveal of survival, and Ashara could be quite useful as an important testimony to several mysterious encounters leading up to and in the wake of Robert's Rebellion. What really happened at the Harrenhal tourney? What really happened at the Tower of Joy? What really happened at Starfall? Not to mention, we have a few women in our story with mysterious and unknown pasts. Who is Quaithe? Why does she hide her face? What is she hiding? Could it be Ashara guiding Dany and visiting her in her dreams? Who is this quirky Septa Lemore? Isn't she a bit liberal for being a Septa? And why has our author given her a scar from birthing a child? And what about this pretty Maris? Okay, Ashara probably isn't pretty Maris. Still, we are left with the question, is Ashara alive? Near the close of A Dance with Dragons, we hear about the death of Stannis Baratheon in battle. This death is reported in the infamous Pink Letter that arrives at the Wall for Jon Snow from Ramsay Bolton. Later, though, our author gave us a sample chapter from The Winds of Winter with Stannis alive and preparing for battle. Was the letter a lie, or did this sample chapter simply occur prior to the writing of the letter? And so we are left to wonder, is Stannis alive? When we last left Stannis, he wasn't doing so great. His forces were snowed in and starving, and he was dealing with potential traitors and disputes among his men. Not to mention, Frey and Manderly forces were coming to attack him. That said, the Frey and Manderly forces are likely outnumbered by Stannis, and Stannis appears quite confident before battle. Some fans even point to a conspicuous frozen lake with holes that could be utilized by Stannis in battle to achieve victory. On the other hand, victory over the Freys and Manderlys is still not victory over the Boltons. The Boltons still have a massive force protected by the walls of Winterfell, and we know that neither Roose nor Ramsay is an enemy to be underestimated. The Pink Letter is also a hot topic of debate. Our author spends a great deal of time describing seals, ribbons, and signatures, which are all methods to deter counterfeit messaging. But at the same time, this focus highlights the potential for counterfeit messaging to appear in our story. The Pink Letter may have some oddities, but at the same time, it's difficult to determine who would have the knowledge and ability to produce a letter in Ramsay's stead, and for what purpose. Could Mance, Theon, Stannis, or Horsebane Umber really get a letter to the Wall with all of that information in it? And how would they benefit from causing chaos at the Wall, which is a 3-week ride away? And so we are left to wonder, is Stannis alive?